Budget Committee. I guess Toby Coates here.
Present.
Present. And Eric Robinson, absent. Laura Palestrini here. We have a quorum. Do we have any public comments?
No, Laura's on the screen.
We had a guest on and
He hasn't joined us yet, has he?
well, we did have a guest. I think that might have been Chip Hessenflow who has signed up to speak, however.
Okay.
6 o'clock.
You want to call him? Give us someone?
I do have.
Or if we could have just a minute, we need to move the table so we can see a little better.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Let's be careful with the power, but let's move this so we can see that straight. Basically,
Yeah.
where it was. No, we're all right. Basically, not students. Screen. That's good. Nice. That's
Hi, Aaron. That's one.
Good evening.
Good evening. We're taking a pause for a second while we move stuff around, but we have called it to order.
actually waiting for Chip Hessenflow to call. He wanted to make a reservation.
He's on. Is show's on?
Chip, can you
No.
hear us, Chip? He's not there. Maybe he needs a different, did you send him on?
I sent it from the, right from. I think maybe he dialed in to the pension thing.
Why don't you tell him to hang up? Sure. I would, yeah, it's actually, yeah, I was telling him to look. toward it.
I would not send it there.
Oh, okay. I'll hear-
Let me forward it.
And Chip is coming in from the police pension board.
He just wants to speak to, there he is. There he is. He's there.
Oh, good.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
I thought you might have dialed into the pension.
The other
So,
one.
ma- Yes, there is someone signed up to speak. But that,
We've called the meeting to order. We have established a quorum, and we are now at public comments. Please go ahead.
All right. Am I the public comment?
Yes, you are the public comment.
All right, I'm Chip Hessenflow, Christopher Hessenflow. I represent the Hampshire pension, police pension board. And we have to as a trustee, we're required to come in and say, one, thank you so much for making the deposit on behalf of the town, the village to the pension. You guys chose a number that was below what our group put together, that we felt that should have been put together. I recognize that you have to make decisions. So we're representing the police officers who serve the community. And we are, in my opinion, required to come in and say, hey, we would like to have the full amount. Obviously, you guys have to make the decisions upon that. But that's about what I need to say on that. As trustees, we enjoyed working on behalf of the community, and we thank you for everything that you have done. But we are concerned. We recognize that our money is invested in cash because we were required to. We're still in a period, and there's no way we're keeping up with inflation. There's no way we're keeping up with the percentage return of that is required to have grown every year. And that leaves this pension under invested. based on what the people would be. So, I'm happy to take a question on, upon that, but I mean, that's really all I need to say.
Trustee Polstry, we will be speaking to that during the meeting today, so.
Okay.
Chip, we'll be talking about that at length tonight. Lori will be, so appreciate your comments.
Thank you so much, and thank you for everything you do for the village. Thank you.
Thank you for your service as well. That's all for public comment? Okay. If you could take a look at the minutes that were distributed yesterday, I guess. And we need a motion to approve the minutes from August 1st, 2022.
So moved. I don't have.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
All right.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We now move into fiscal year 2024 operating funds budget presentation. I'm going to turn it over to our Director of Finance and let you take it away, beginning with the utility funds. Oh, no, I'm sorry, we're going to the police first, I think you said. Hand it to you. Did we?
Okay. So I just have a couple of slides and then we'll be going right to the handout that I provided to you. So welcome to our first budget committee meeting. First of all, we will be going over the general fund budget as Chairman Polistrini indicated. As far as highlights, the general fund has $6.63 million in expenditures and $6.61 million in revenues. That does include grant funds as well as transfers. So therefore, we are presenting a balanced budget at this time with revenues in excess of expenses of $26,000. Our budget is balanced by many different factors, but probably the greatest of which are cost containment, revenue growth, and prioritization of operating and capital projects. And while the term may be more appropriate for the utility fund, the budget is fluid at this time. As of 4 p.m., I have a request for an additional $21,000 in funds to be expended by the police department. By about 5:20, that number was down to 14,000 and change. So, you know, there are many things that are still being worked on. And one of the largest things that is fluid at this time is the fact that we have not settled our collective bargaining agreement. Our current contract ends April 30th, 2023. So while we do have dollars allocated for the police department, these are fluid.
And those discussions start on Friday, so it'll probably be pretty close to the end of the fiscal year before we go.
Okay. So will that be able to be taken into consideration?
We will, depending on how far we get in the next couple of weeks, we may be able to come back even at our next meeting, but for sure, by the time we present the preliminary budget to the board, I'm hoping that we will have numbers. Sometimes collective bargaining agreements go into the next fiscal year without being settled. And that would require retro pay, you know, back to the start of the contract. And if necessary, we may have to do a budget amendment at that point to account for that.
Okay. And just for the sake of the start of this meeting anyway, when are we planning to have the village board vote on this budget?
I would hope to have it done at the first meeting in April.
Okay.
That way it gives us some leeway if there are discussions that need to be had. It gives us one more meeting.
Okay.
We do have to turn in or have our budget completed before April 30th. So there's always the option for special meetings if necessary. We don't want to do that unless it's absolutely necessary. But the state requires us to have a budget to begin our next fiscal year.
Okay. Thank you.
So some of the budget initiatives that I want to highlight in the general fund, we are increasing the workforce with the addition of 2 part-time staff individuals. One for the promotions committee that was requested, as well as a part-time detective in the police department. You'll see that we're furthering many of our technology advancements, and we will be utilizing grant funding to a significant extent.
What is a promotions department?
Committee, I'm sorry. So that is the promotions committee. They're looking for an individual to,
I didn't know we had a
And it's
promotions
public
committee.
relations.
oh, public relations, I'm sorry.
Okay, that's,
I always say that, don't I?
That's not a person, that's just contract dollars.
Oh, well, okay,
It
well,
is.
okay,
okay.
part-time contract,
You
dollars.
had me, I thought Linda was one of her, somebody.
There we go. I'm sorry. Well,
Look at that picture up there a minute. I started to send this to all of you today,
Oh.
in case you think it's easy to replace, in case you wonder what it's like to replace a fire hydrant, that's a regular fire hydrant getting replaced.
Done hundreds.
Yeah,
It's a
dirty.
dirty,
We have like 3 or 4 left until we were down to 3 or 4 of the old ones. But that one's, well, that's the new one.
it's muddy and wet.
Yeah.
Period.
And really messy and have to get all the water shut off. It's just a challenge. So Doug, or Mark's been doing this the last 2 weekends. And he finished his last one yesterday or today, so he's pretty excited about it.
Thank you for sharing.
Didn't know Lori was gonna use that picture, but it's a good one.
all right. So I'm going to project, hopefully. Sure
You're doing
that's-
the police stuff first, right?
we're gonna start with revenues in the general fund, so it'll be this, second page of the handout that I distributed. I'm not sure
There
why,
you go. You're good. It's just lagging a little bit,
it's lagging a lot.
but.
There we go. Okay, so, as I said, so just briefly to go over what's on the first page of your, handout. I do have kind of a reconciliation of, those budget items, yes.
If I could pause for 1 second, since we do have a trustee online, does he have a copy of this?
He does not have a copy of that, but I'm going to display the exact
Okay.
stuff that as we go through it. So I think that, he'll have it in larger size than we actually do.
Okay,
Yeah, I can see it on my screen, but thank you for thinking of that.
you're welcome.
There is, one page that you do not have, trustee Kelly, and that is, just a listing of the items that we are paying for in the general fund with, grant dollars that would, or either grant dollars or something that's being reimbursed by other money. So, that includes body worn cameras for the police department. We have a retiree that's accepting insurance, village insurance, 100% paid by that retiree. So that is a reimbursed amount. Our SROs are reimbursed to the extent, the 2/3 of their salary is paid by the school district.
I have a question. Why isn't the district paying it all since,
Because they work summers for us. That's the logic anyway.
okay. Has anybody done the calculations to see if it works out okay that way? The 1/3 for the,
We've actually considered going to them and asking them to pay the whole thing.
one third of the time we pay, but you know, they're in school 10 months. Does it balance out?
I mean, it's an approximation, right? 2/3 versus 1/3, so.
That's the way the contract reads, but we can look into this, see if
I'm
it's,
just curious.
if it's still right. And are you aware, Doug, anybody, any districts that pay all of their SROs, like the school districts? Most of them are split, right?
Oh, okay. Makes sense. Sorry.
The only, well, I'll take that back. Some, in my experience, there has been some SROs that are compensated at 100%, reimbursed at 100%, but during the summer, they're engaged in like school, either summer school or summer activity programs and that with the kids that the school sponsors.
I think this is pretty standard in D300, but we'll take it.
Thank you.
The other things that are on the list, trustee Kelly, are, the notation of, one at-fault, accident, being, reimbursed to the extent, or not to the extent that we have to pay our deductible, so $1,000 deductible. And then the two large items are safe routes to school and the Rin and Park, stormwater, remediation. So now for those in attendance, we're going on to the first page.
What was that you just described?
Rin
That
and
category?
Oh, it's just a listing of any project cost that's being reimbursed, at least in part, by grants or other funds.
I'm not sure.
Reimbursable. All right, so on to the revenue. I'm gonna run through this fairly quickly. We do not have our property tax extension yet. That will be coming out. We will be able to finalize those numbers before the budget is adopted. Just so you know, consistent with prior years, at this point in time, I use 98% of the expected extension amounts for the budget. And then Kane County does provide the revenue recovery dollar amount at $2,292. So that will remain consistent. With respect to intergovernmental revenue, we're actually showing a change of -1%. That is due to the personal property replacement tax. The IML actually provides us with some assistance in calculating how that's going to change. It has been going down over the years. It did well exceed my expectations this year, but based on the decrease that they're expecting, I have built my revenue projection on that. Overall, telecom tax has been going down over the last several years, and we are increasing our utility tax a little bit each year. Any questions while I move on?
Is the telecom tax, is that the one that's on the regular phone bill, or is that also included in the cell phone bills?
It is on both.
It is.
Yes, it usually shows, it depends on your phone bill, but it'll show either a city tax or municipal tax. And then reimbursable revenues. We do charge our enterprise funds for the admin work that we do here at Village Hall, so that's included in here. And then with respect to reimbursable other items, we have included the school resource officer amounts, the retiree insurance, 2 reimbursable tows that are both in revenue and in expense, and then that PD at fault accident. All insurance recoveries would go into the reimbursable other category. There are some blanks in this next section. So the items that I'd like to point out are the $186,000 transfer to the capital improvement fund, as well as a $186,000 road infrastructure fee. Do you want to discuss that right away? Or?
So we could discuss the whole public works thing as a package if you'd like.
Okay, so we will be discussing this particular item to a greater extent.
It's a new revenue source proposed to be dedicated for the debt service with public work direction.
And then the other 2 items I would like to highlight are the Rin and Park and body worn camera grant dollar amounts, which are towards the bottom here. Those are actually multiple grants. For Park and Rin, we intend to use a member initiative grant from the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, as well as a grant, a federal grant from FEMA that runs through IEMA here in Illinois. And then the body worn cameras, we're attempting to get an ILETS fee. That's the Illinois Law Enforcement Training Standards Board grant, which would cover 100% of the expenditures for those body worn cams.
186,000? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm looking up.
$45,200.
Okay. Sorry, I was on the wrong line.
And then with respect to license permits and fees, that's our last category of general fund revenue. We are expecting about a 3.84% overall increase. We have a little bit of increase in the building permit area. That's due to the build out of the townhomes in both neighborhood M and R at Prairie Ridge. Those generate essentially the same permitting fees as a single family home. Only one building is ×6 or ×5, so that's why we're looking at an increase in the revenue there. Any questions about revenue in the general fund?
Okay, sorry, can I just ask a question about the sheet, because I don't see the headers for the column? Is I the FY23 proposed budget and G the FY22 projected?
Yes, I'm sorry, I should have frozen.
Okay. All right, thank you.
I
And
think
just for clarification, Trustee Palestrini, since it's a meeting of the whole, am I allowed to ask questions?
It's a working meeting at both. I don't have any problems with it.
Okay, I just don't want to overstep.
It was published as a committee of the whole.
Working session of the committee. Yeah. Can I ask about, like, because I'm looking at the numbers on the class for license fines, permits and fees. The expectation of almost a 30%, almost 28% building permit fees down, is that 30? Zoning fee, or, well, building permit, we'll start with. Building permit administrative fee.
So that is a small fee that comes in on certain permits that's segregated. So it's very variable. I usually budget at $5,000 just because I really don't know where that will land each year.
Okay. Okay, please.
Trustee Kelly?
No, no questions.
And we're going to go to the expenses. Oops.
I'm sorry, I lied. One question, Ms. Lane. The FEMA DCEO grant for Renan Park,
Yes.
is this a matching grant or a regular, just a full support grant?
So we will be using the DCEO grant as matching funds as required by the FEMA grant.
Okay, but it doesn't have to come out of like the general fund budget to match, similar to like the sidewalk, the Safe Path to School program.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
Trustee Kelly, you might remember that Senator Stevenson had gotten us a member initiative grant for $150,000. And it's a general description that just says infrastructure. The original plan was to put up a community sign, but we've asked Mike, Mayor Reed, to consider using that for this now as the match for that grant. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Moving on to the administrative personnel budget. Overall, we're looking at an increase of 7.7%. I would say the majority of that is in the health insurance area. I'm aware of an employee in the admin department that is going to move from the HMO to the PPO, which is more expensive. And then we did get an approximately 8% increase. We do have the renewal in the door. I'm actually meeting with them tomorrow to get all the details, but we have budgeted a significant increase in the area of health insurance because of that reason.
I don't know, those trustee salaries are up 14%. It's pretty steep.
Yeah, so the trustee salaries, I kind of look at the calendars over the last few years. You're not actually getting a raise. It's just in case you have more meetings.
Try and work you some overtime.
Boy, it looks bad though.
Yeah. It's not a large dollar amount. We probably should have the delta in there too, because it's, you know, around $3,000. So large percentage increase, but not a giant increase.
Mhm.
Any questions in that area at all?
No. Anybody else?
All right, in the area of contractual services, I'm sorry, I'm kind of bouncing around there. As far as giant increases, if you will, there are some significant increases as far as percentage wise. However, on the dollar side, I would like to point out village engineering. That is including some engineering that's going to be required for the sidewalk grant. We don't believe that the construction actually will take place during fiscal year 24, unfortunately, but we do have the engineering services in there in this budget. Let's see, what else can we talk about? The audit, I have a fairly significant increase in that as well. The reason for that is the village will be undergoing a single audit this year due to the dollar amount of federal expenditures that we have had specifically for the streetscape project that will require different auditing procedures and deeper dive into our expenditures for that purpose. So I have increased that quite a bit. With respect to, yep.
Is that correct? For the beautification program, I thought that was back at 100,000. You showing 50?
Yeah, I thought I had it back at, I'll have to take a look at that. Because it was, yeah, this, I did have village beautification in at 100,000. That makes me very worried.
And then what is the economic development? I see 3,800.
So that is the Economic Development Committee. They have over the years had things such as, and economic development, is that what they call it?
BDC.
The BDC is what they call it now. So everything from SurveyMonkey to various ESRI reports and those types of things. In there.
But this is why Trustee Kelly is really with us here tonight. This is supposed to be 100,000. It was yesterday, so I'm not sure what happened.
Yeah, me either.
But the only question is whether or not that 50,000 will roll up into the total. But this might be a good time, Trustee Palestrina, to allow Trustee Kelly to speak to that.
Trustee Kelly?
Briefly?
Sure. So I did reach out to the head of the beautification committee, as well as the chairman of the BDC, to verify with them. As you know, we did have to postpone our regular meeting, and we've actually postponed it until March. So I reached out to them individually just to make sure that what I had spoken about with the 100,000 is where they would like to see it go forward. I did hear back from the chair of the BDC, who had expressed the request of the 100,000, and in his explanation, which I found reasonable, is that part of the idea of funding that was to come out of the places for eating tax, because they kind of go hand in hand. In his opinion, that as you spend money on the businesses, you're going to increase that type of tax revenue or the opportunity for that tax, and that should cover the cost of the 100,000. But that was the desire, irregardless if that's where it comes from or not, that the facade grant program continue at the $100,000 mark. And Mr. Hedges were on those communications as well.
And the original roll up of the general fund did include 100,000, so we'll have to verify that.
If I can ask Trustee Kelly then, we had, I think the last grant that we had come in or come through us, which as we know was over what the 100,000 was. I thought it was like maybe November. Have there been any grant applications that have come in since then, November?
No, there have been no grant applications that have been presented to the BDC, and the beautification report has not included any grant applications either.
Okay.
And I do know that I thought that as a village board, it was decided that no more would be approved for this year because of how far it already went over, and that going forward, that would be a hard limit.
Mhm.
At least that's my memory of the meeting, but I may be remembering it incorrectly.
Nope, that's
Actually in the minutes that you distributed to me.
yeah, it's in the minutes that I distribute, which you don't have right now, but yeah, that was the way it was. As it was discussed, it was, I was just curious if any had come in because somebody saw it online somewhere and put in an application, so.
No, not as of the most recent meeting.
Okay.
Okay, and then I wanted to point out, building, inspection services. This is a matter of timing. So despite increasing our, revenue as compared to our projected, year end 2023, I simply have done a calculation indicating 80% of the revenue that we share either with, what will be the fire department and safe bill.
Okay.
With respect to utilities, we did add some utilities for the Rowell Road sign that is now illuminated. And one of the large percentage increases is our office supplies. Having additional personnel and greater need, we have exceeded the budget this year, so I built my budget this year based on our projected expenditures for 2023. And then the other large item in this category would be computer software. As you know, we are in the process of implementing the Tyler Encode product for our electronic records processing, and the cost of that is substantially greater than MSI as a whole, almost 3 times the dollar amount. And we do expect to have to at least have some of the modules carry over for a portion of the year. So I've got MSI expenses in there again this year. Any questions with respect to that?
So it's overlapping then, or we're gonna have?
Yes, we will have some overlap. So our first module to go live will be the utility billing module. And then, we just it's a process getting everything moved over.
Okay.
So yes, there will be definitely overlap.
Okay.
And then with respect to the next category, other expenses, the sales tax agreement line item is over $300,000. That's my expectation for the potential expenses for fiscal year 24. This is kind of a tricky line item. We only have one current sales tax incentive agreement, and that's with Metrics Industrial Park, which includes Love's and Truck Country. And to date, they have not taken any of their funds. So the potential is pretty great for a large distribution of cash. The sales tax agreement that is in the projected column for 2023 is the last distribution to Seagulls. They have terminated their agreement. And
So let's go back to metrics then. They haven't taken any of it, so it's just kind of, because they haven't checked off everything on their to-do list.
Well, yeah.
it goes actually beyond that. They actually could have gotten this money before the to-do list. But they
Don't reach out.
We're waiting for them, but we're accumulating an obligation here.
Okay.
Yeah, so their agreement calls for them to identify a third-party trustee to request the money from the village and then do the calculations to distribute the money to the three parties.
yeah.
Isn't it normal for, shouldn't we be doing some kind of administrative expense to handle this account?
This is an incentive where we're giving them an incentive, so we really would take our money back.
Be charging us. So they've chosen not
We're
to?
getting kind of,
They honestly, they're just kind of lazy, to be honest.
Okay.
I shouldn't put it that way. There are three parties involved and none of them have taken the initiative to go hire a trustee, open a bank account, and then ask for the money and then write checks to all those three different companies.
Okay,
Excuse me.
so until they do that, we just hold all the money.
correct.
And that money has, over how many years has that been then?
It's about 3 years.
3 years?
Mhm.
And then you expect it to be up to that, and that 302 is the entire amount. So we've budgeted for this in past years and they just haven't used it.
That's correct.
And it's been carried over.
Yes,
So for this one, that 302,000 is just a matter of probably an accumulation of all those years. And
that's
that
it,
jump.
exactly right.
Okay.
You do get the reports on how much tax, so you know how much.
Yes, we get reports on, what we have taken in and then it's split in half.
Okay. So,
In the capital outlay section, we have some additional money in our budget for the storm signal. We have a rusty box on one of the sirens, and we were told about the rusty box for several years. And it still hasn't been replaced because I guess it hasn't gotten to a critical level, but we are budgeting for that. And then in the equipment area, we do have some items included that will be mainly for cashiering with our new system. So a new cash drawer, our current receipt printer is, it's been here my entire 10 years, so 13 plus years old. It's gonna be a plug and play. I'm not even sure how that thing is connected to our computer at this point. It's not by USB or, a normal printer connection at this point. As well as some scanners, which will be critical to our new processes. With respect to AP processing, we'll actually be able to scan invoices so that when Doug goes into the system and says, what's my Verizon bill, he'll actually get to pull up the Verizon bill that will be associated with the expense that he's in. So those will be at some end user desks. So the total administrative expenses projected for fiscal year 2024 probably need to have $50,000 added to it, but $1,642,301. Any questions?
that's a 14.3% increase then?
Right,
Okay.
over the 23 budget.
Any questions, anyone? It's a lot to take in, but okay.
So our next section is the police departments. And as we discussed earlier, we do not have a settled contract yet. So these numbers are due to change potentially. I will tell you that the reason why the wages are projected less in fiscal year 24 is for a couple different reasons. Upon the retirement of our former chief and lieutenant, we paid out a significant amount of vacation. And in last year's budget year 2023, we actually had a 15th police officer budgeted. That officer is out on an extended leave, I guess you could call it. And so that was not budgeted for fiscal year 24. And then I'd like to pop down right to the employer pension contribution, the $525,000 number. The pension fund, Chip was kind of choppily trying to explain, hires an actuary, to compute the amount that they believe is, required to reach 90% funding in 2040, which is a statutory requirement for the village as well as the pension fund. That actuarial report called for a contribution of in excess of $657,000. You guys saw that number in December, I believe it was, when the police pension provided the municipal compliance report. On the other hand, Foster and Foster is the actuary for IPOPIF, the Illinois Police Officers.
Pension investment fund.
Thank you very much, Pension Investment Fund. They called for a contribution of less, 504,000, I believe it was. Let me just go to my tab here. And essentially we have rounded up, if you will, calling for a $525,000 contribution. Oh, I know.
You get 504 and all the three cells.
Those are previous years. Yeah, that was the amount that was budgeted last year. So it's an increase of 4%, and kind of hits it's not a middle target, right? But it's greater than, so Foster's contribution is based on the 90% statutorial minimum that the village could contribute.
Did you mention that amount? I heard you say 6. Okay.
Yeah, 657, yes,
If you can just, I can interrupt then,
yes.
the 504, the 657, and the 525. So we've got the three numbers. I'm just trying to attribute what each
The
one
six,
was.
okay, so the 504 is the amount that the village contributed last year. That was 90% of the required contribution. And the amount that was computed by the Illinois Department of Insurance that previously did the actuarial calculations.
Okay.
This year, because of that combined consolidated pension fund, the actuarial report was done by Foster and Foster. And if you hold tight for just 1 minute, I'll get you exactly what their number was.
If I could just say while you're
Yeah.
doing that, Lori, so what the maximum number would be 657.
Okay.
That's the amount that the pension board is requesting. We do believe though, however, that once all these funds get to Springfield, and the check is going tomorrow, right? Or the funds are going tomorrow?
They're being wire transferred.
So the big part of it, after all this time, Toby, you've been asking it, it's finally going down and we're gonna start earning interest, and that fund will start to earn interest. I won't say how much.
It's going to earn more interest than it has in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Which has been 1% or less.
Yeah.
So now with a bigger fund and an actuarial firm that can actually go out and invest the money in stuff other than savings accounts, the return will be greater, which means our contribution to it will significantly be less because of the returns.
On the other side.
Ultimately, yeah.
So we have had, but the money we have been holding it, they haven't asked for it, or what's the reason why it hasn't been sent then?
There were a couple reasons why it wasn't sent. First of all, the fund technically didn't have any required transferable assets. So those funds that held mutual funds, stocks, those types of things, they were required to send their money. The fact that our money was all in cash, and our, I would say our pension trustees were a little bit leery of the disorganization of the fund.
Okay.
Unlike the firefighters, the police fund was very, very disorganized. They decided to hold their money. The other reason was we wanted to have, so there have been 4 individuals identified to sign with State Street Bank, who is the bank that is I don't want to say fiduciary. They're the institution that's holding this fund.
The state's fund or ours?
The state's fund.
Okay.
Yes. So we, like I said, we identified 4 individuals. It had to be the fund treasurer, who by default is me because of being finance director for the village. And they selected 2 active police officers and 1 trustee from a mayoral appointment. Unfortunately, only 2 of us were readily able to sign on to State Street Bank. It was like, seems every governmental portal, it has challenges. That one had some significant challenges. So they just were uncomfortable. It requires,
It took several months to get signatures, that's the bottom line.
well, it was a little bit more than that. Just suffice it to say that they didn't want to send the money with only 2 people, because if somebody got hit by the proverbial bus, then the money would be stuck down there. Couldn't get money back if we had a disability claim, or if, we had needed funds to pay pensions. So that was one of the other delays.
Okay, so then at this point, then what was it that clicked that got us to send the money yesterday, or?
Finally got the 4th person to sign up for the portal.
That's it then. All right, so then the money goes over there, and so before that, we were getting 1%, holding it in multiple banks, since there's a 250,000 limit for
We had
insurance.
pledged assets actually. So.
Okay. So, but the money's gone now, so at this point, then we'll start earning greater interest in it.
I mean, it's always subject, it's going to be in the stock market and everywhere else. So it's subject to market fluctuations. So in certain quarters, we may lose money. In other quarters, we may, you just have to kind of ride the tide, essentially.
Okay.
Yep.
And this is the one that's mandated by the legislature.
That's accurate.
Okay.
Yep.
That's from a couple years ago. Okay. Thank you for that.
Yep. And to clarify also, the Foster and Foster 90% minimum contribution was $514,637.
So you have the option to fund between 514 and 657
Or more.
Okay.
or more.
So where did the
And staff-
525 then?
That's
come?
what staff is recommending, a little more than the minimum, but
Okay.
not anywhere near the maximum.
Okay.
Sorry, can I ask a quick question? Going back a couple of years, Ms. Lyons, I remember that we had a pretty big discussion about there was going to be a year where we had to hit a $600,000 threshold for this pension in order for us to stay on track to hit the minimum funding requirements, or the state regulated funding requirements, by the date that's hit. Does this push that down the road to where we're going to even have larger sums in subsequent years, or is there a reason why we're able to fund at a lower rate than what originally was thought we were going to have to, especially as Trustee Coates pointed out, we haven't been earning a lot of interest in this, so it's not like we have interest income offsetting it. So are we still, like, if we don't do that 600 and whatever amount, and we stay with the 525 the staff's recommending, are we still on track with the graduated amounts to hit what we need to hit by that specific year, or does this push to a later year an even larger fiscal responsibility?
So assuming that Foster and Foster has, they have certain assumptions, right? It's based on actuarial tables, life expectancy of dependents and beneficiaries. There's many things that go into these calculations, but at 525 or even at 514, we should still, based on their calculations, meet the statutory requirement of 90% funded in 2040.
Well,
Without adding a bigger number in a subsequent year than what was originally projected?
It's just 2 different actuarial calculations, Trustee Kelly, 2 different companies coming up with 2 different numbers, slightly different methodologies.
Okay,
So-
I'm just trying to make sure that we're not, like, this doesn't just, as I know has been said in board meetings on other topics, this doesn't just kick the can down the road to where we have a bigger payment in a subsequent year because it's not where it needs to be, but it sounds like that's not what is going to happen.
Right.
So-
Every year they're going to give us a new number. They're going to calculate a new actuarial based on our people, their tenure, based on our experience, and based on the investments.
Will the board be able to see the actuarial report each year?
Sure, I can give them to you now.
Aaron, the actuary will come out with a complete report, similar to what we're looking at right now, but it'll be in detail. You can look that over. But as the interest increases, as our profit per se, from the 1% or 0.5% we've been getting, this number will continuously, hopefully, go down.
Yeah, absolutely agree on that. And that's something to look forward to. Trustee Coth wanted to make sure we weren't saying instead of 600 this year, then it's 675 next year. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Excellent.
Any questions about the wages and benefit area, any other areas of concern in this section?
I mean, percentage wise, the smaller numbers really. That's fine. Continue.
All right. All right, for contractual services, I guess the areas that are increasing significantly, we'll skip over the building, which is at 237% greater than the projected 2023, but at $1,000, we won't worry about that. Rentals is increasing. That is due to the increase in rent due to the the renewal of our lease that happened this fiscal year, as well as the build-out expenses, which are built into that particular line item. And then
Real quick, the
Sure.
rentals, is that the police department building?
that is the building, yes.
That rent went down this year.
With all the build out and everything, no.
Not with the build out, but just the rent itself had gone down when we renewed for the 5 years.
So
But it does build back up, I understand that.
the base actually went down, but went up. So
It didn't really go down.
Okay, but it was what, 5,000 a month and
I
now
don't
it's like
remember the numbers
3.
right now.
No, it was reported that the rent was staying the same. The 5,000 or whatever, 5,000 and change that we were paying, the new lease started at 5,000.
Yeah, it rolled back to the original lease amount.
That's what I
But
remember.
but then the first increase came with the first month, so then we ended up at exactly the same place.
Okay.
So the first month's rent was the same as the last lease. And now, once we get the build out, whenever that happens, that'll start kicking in.
Okay. How much of an increase is that then?
$1,785 a month.
Okay, so
If you
that's,
remember, the total amount was around 85,000.
yeah, and then we're already paying them the 5, and then so the 85 then
Amortized
divided by
5%.
5 years, okay. Okay, thank you.
In the area of training, we are going to send our new lieutenant to staff and command training. So that's one of the reasons for the increase in training. And obviously training is one of our big initiatives. And as far as effectuating our strategic plan. And then other professional services, that includes many of the SaaS subscriptions that go along with our technology enhancements. If you'd like to delve into the details of that, I have that. So overall, this contractual service area is looking at a nearly 30% increase in fiscal year 24 budget over the 23 budget.
What is the officer in charge?
So when we have a young officer that
You know,
is,
that's because-
oh, sure.
So if we have a non-supervisor, that is put in a place of being in charge of the shift, and it happens almost every day from 6 a.m. until someone else comes in. They get a small, they get a half an hour of overtime.
Oh, okay.
for the day. So it's 1/2 hour for, unless they're in charge the whole day. It's a full hour. Is it overtime or is it straight time?
It's overtime.
It is overtime.
Yep.
Any other questions then till today? All right, continue please.
Okay. Struggling scrolling here. Arrow down. In the area of commodities, this is actually quite comparable to last year. No areas of significant change other than that $300 in maintenance supplies that we budget every year. 100% increase over our expected expenditure this year. And any questions in that area?
No.
All right. And then installment payments are those payments to Enterprise for the 2 squads that we are leasing. And in the equipment area, we have quite a lot of equipment that was talked about in the technology area. That includes the body cams at $45,000 and
The tow fund line there is the 47,000. That's what you just authorized, majority of that, the last meeting.
yes. Yep. Yep. Any questions there?
No police vehicles this year?
So we're going to try to order, but we don't believe that we're going to be getting them in. Because it takes so darn long to get them.
Don't they request money down first though?
No.
Okay. What, as for what's coming down the pike? Because we did buy a few last year, when do we think we're going to order more? I mean, what do we think we need?
I think if we order them towards the end of the year, if we're, I mean, well, once the orders open up and then we'll get the lead time on it. If we wait until next year, so I mean, next fiscal year to pay for them, we should be fine because we have 5 brand new squads. I mean, they're all about 30,000 miles. And then the other ones, everything is in really good shape except for 2. But even those one is a backup vehicle, that white Dodge Charger. And then the other one is a SRO vehicle that has pretty high mileage, but it's in good condition maintenance wise. So we're in good place for this year.
So then what are we looking to order then for come the beginning of next year then? I mean, are you looking to buy 2 or?
I would say it's 2.
2?
Yeah.
It's in the capital plan.
And we did how many this year? 5, 4, 5, 5. Okay. We can use the brakes.
But it's half in 1 year.
We don't want to get into a bind.
No.
Because as we go to all these housing projects, shake hands and have coffee and pat each other on the back, that's more bodies being added, which means less and less staff.
Okay, we're ready to go to the street fund or to the street department.
Can I just real quick capital outlay? There's nothing there.
So everything is in the equipment area.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And no tow fund purchases because essentially we're, with the expenditure of the 47,000, we will be rebuilding the tow fund.
What should be left in it? Ballpark,
Oh, gosh.
$2,000, 20,000.
Yeah, I'd say about $5,000. Yep, and then we'll expect about 20,000 or so, based, I think it was 22,000 in the revenue section is what we're looking at, so.
This, can you think of, what was the last thing that we used for the tow fund? Because that was the first time I haven't been on board that long, but.
We've used it for everything from vehicles, to radios. Radios were our last big expenditure, out of that fund,
Okay, and that was just a couple years ago.
just last year.
That's right.
Yep, when we moved to the Starcom, is it?
Okay, I didn't remember that that was used from the tow fund.
Yes.
So, okay. So we do use them regularly as we.
That was
accumulate.
like $60,000, so that was like the accumulation of several years worth, but yeah. I encourage using it kind of at, I mean, I get it that we're building it up to use it for another big expense. But I don't want to get into a position, when I first came here, I wasn't even aware of the tow fund. So we had to go back and like try to recreate it and, you know, it was, fortunately wasn't that old, but
So just kind of build it up a little bit, spend it on a project that we, okay.
it has to involve traffic enforcement.
Okay.
Any additional questions regarding police? All right, the street department.
Before you start, I know Chief Pam wanted to get everything of his out early. Are we doing what you need to do or?
Anything else? There's nothing else in there.
No.
Good to go.
So that's just in case you wanted to leave, I wasn't sure.
Stick around.
Okay. All right, continue 36.
All right, the next department is the street department. So we're looking at, gosh, I'm not sure what this formula is.
Just delete that, it's really wrong.
That is definitely wrong. We're looking at a personnel budget where the 24 budget is over the 23 budget of 14%.
Let me just speak to that briefly. Okay,
Sure.
Back in January, we had a situation in the streets department, public works, let's call it, where another community was hiring plow drivers. And I spoke to the mayor about this at the time. And we were gonna lose a couple of our guys, and a couple of really good guys, just because somebody was throwing a bunch of money out. And so we sat down with them and worked out a step schedule. We've never had steps in with public works before. And we talked for years about doing that. And that was the time to do it in January, so we didn't lose our drivers in the middle of the season. And go out and end up probably paying somebody else more to get somebody else. So we gave some increases in January. And that's why this is up so high right now this year. So those were built in slightly. You'll see that the current year is also spending over budget, projected over budget, and that's why. So that's just the top line, but it does impact almost all the other lines below.
Okay.
So I just wanted you to be aware that we made those changes in January.
And the budget is built with increases like Jay's talking about again in January.
Similar as you may or may not be aware, in the police department, there are step schedules in the contract, and every year those schedules go up by 1% according to the contract. Now we'll have something similar in the streets department. There won't be a percentage increase every year, but they will get those steps.
Mm-hmm.
Not a contractual obligation, just a policy.
Okay.
Yeah.
So right now, I mean, we're actually over budget right now then by what we're at 8 months in and what we've got for the full budget for this current fiscal year.
Yeah, the wages will be over. You end up with
About 12,000. Okay, all right.
Before you go too far down, I do have a question on, and I may have missed it if you spoke to it. If you can scroll up.
Sure.
The health insurance difference
Sorry. Yes.
For police or
for the streets, it was budgeted this year at 65. We're already at 113, and next year we're looking at 116.
So last year, we had an employee that had declined to take insurance for a number of years that joined the village's health plan. And I was not aware of that. I mean, so it was not budgeted for. So the difference, the main difference is the fact that we added an employee and his dependent to the health insurance plan.
When we start the insurance, is it January 1st that begins? Or
It
is
begins
fiscal
May
year?
1.
Okay, it is fiscal year for our fiscal. Okay.
So when we're looking at adding staff or not adding staff, is it safe to say on average, an employee plus one dependent would lead to a $40,000, $50,000 increase in health insurance cost?
So as I mentioned, that was the main reason, but no, I would say, it's age dependent. We have an Affordable Care Act plan, so insurance runs the village anywhere from approximately $7,000 to probably $36,000 a year for one person. That, yes.
$36,000 a year for one person.
Independents,
Independence.
Family.
depending if they're old like me, then they pay a lot more.
So I know we are paying for the employees' insurance, but we're also paying for their families and.
So depending on what plan you take and what level of coverage, so single or employee and spouse, employee and children, or employee and family. Each person is charged a premium based on an age banded table.
What's
So-
that premium share for dependents? Is it different than?
So again, it depends on if you pick HMO or PPO. The village contributes more to those that select the HMO plan and less if they pick the PPO plan. The most that the village will contribute is 90% of the premium, and the least that we contribute is 85% of the premium.
That's that same percentage for dependents.
Yes.
And I voted no on that last year.
Right.
I just really, we do everything for the employees and I know we try, but I think having the families and that's just a lot on all the taxpayers and I still feel that way. So love our employees.
What I'd like to do, I think it might be important or would be good for you to see is each year when the budget is finally passed, I mean, I can do this in advance, but when the budget is passed, we have to post on our website all employees that are compensated. And when I say compensated, the whole compensation package is $75,000 or greater. So I think it would be important for you to see like the individual's position, their wages, and then their benefits. So I would say the Village of Hampshire is competitive, but we're not extravagant with our wages and benefits.
Okay, and I'm just looking at the insurance itself, because I know it's got to be separate, but.
But every other village has the same program.
Most companies and, I shouldn't say most, a lot of companies and most public employers do provide premium match for the dependents.
Okay, but it's not paid 100% for them or.
The job I just came from was very similar to this one, exactly the same. 85% of the premium was paid for both.
Okay,
And most of the unions are 80-20.
Okay. And you said some of it was ACA insurance?
100% of it is.
100% of it is. And is that higher or lower than using other insurance companies?
So back when the Affordable Care Act came out and we switched to that type of plan, there was not a single employee that didn't, and the village, that didn't save money by going to the Affordable Care Act plan.
Okay.
Pretty soon, eventually, we will reach a mid-market level because of the number of employees that we have that are on the insurance. And that being said, we'll be reevaluating it to the next level because we're not sure what the premiums will do at that point when we reach that number of employees.
Thank you. Continue.
Okay. The next area is contractual services. I would say that pretty much everything in this area has either is insignificant as far as dollar amount or immaterial, or most of the items have gone down. We did keep contractual services for snow. That's the downtown cleanup that we talked about, Laura, at the last meeting with Trees Unlimited. We haven't really had that many snow events this year, fortunately. So we did decide to retain that at $25,000. Are there any questions with respect to this?
Joe?
All right. You will notice that the sidewalk area is down, and as we stated, we don't believe that we'll be able to do the construction for the sidewalks in this fiscal year. So that was included in the budget this year, but it's not included next year.
Can I go back to the tree removal, the maintenance of that? You know, it shows that we're over budget then. I mean, is that enough based on what we've paid already this year and being over?
So we feel like we have fewer and fewer like potentially hazardous trees, but it was kind of a discretionary amount. You just never know if something's going to be hit by lightning or hit by a car, or, just because of its age, require removal. So.
Because, yeah, all right.
This last year, we're expected to spend over. Well, we already have spent over, but.
It was a constant expenditure, and that's why I'm looking at going, wow, is the 30,000 enough? Okay.
I mean, in-house, the guys are able to do a number of removal of those trees. However, depending on the size and structure, where it's located, they do have assistance with that.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. The next area is commodities. This is fairly consistent with the budget for last year, 64% over our expected expenditures for fiscal year 23. Probably the largest area, of discretionary budgeting is in the area of fuel. We obviously experienced much higher gas prices this year than in years past, but we didn't have as many snow events again, and so didn't burn the diesel fuel that we had expected. So we did keep that basically at the same budget level as we had this year.
What's the street scratch?
What's that?
The street scratch,
So,
the spending. So
meaning, I don't know what you're talking about.
when we were talking about revenue, you asked me if I wanted to talk about the streets department.
Oh, let's continue, and then when we get down after capital outlay.
Okay, that's what I was ready.
Okay.
Police uniforms.
Uniforms, what about that?
They're not police uniforms.
No, so each of the guys is given an allowance
Oh,
for
public
uniforms.
works. Okay,
Yes, yep.
Okay.
And then debt service is a general obligation bond. This is the last year for fiscal year 24 will be the last year for that payment. And then down in capital outlay, we have several equipment items, including an asphalt hopper and equipment that will help the street department do their jobs more efficiently and effectively, increasing safety in the village. Installment payments includes the new international truck that was ordered about a year ago and expected to come in right at May 1st, possibly. We're not really sure. We got kind of a confusing email about the actual arrival date of that. And then vehicles includes I want to go back to installment payments. That also includes the payment for the sweeper, And then we are still paying for, another international truck that is included in there. Then vehicles, are just some capital expenditures with related to vehicles. And capital outlay includes the Rin and Park, storm water situation, that is being funded by the grants, the DCEO and the FEMA grants. Now, over to the street garage.
Toby, would you like to
No.
talk through this? You want me to go through it?
No, go ahead.
So, trustee Polistrini, you have before you, and trustee Kelly, I emailed you this. Did you receive that?
I will check right now.
So this is for several years, in fact, if you take a look at the first email from Dave Starrett, he says that this is the 5th time that he's brought street garage to the board for approval. And he actually says in this email that he's glad that it didn't pass the first 4 times because those buildings would have been inadequate. This is probably, in my mind, the most important priority certainly for the Public Works Department. And it's the first time that we've presented a new revenue stream for a specific project like this. So you have before you an email from Dave to me, and then my email to Dave, which outlines, so if you look at that, which is page 3 of this small little packet, it's my email to Dave. And what we're proposing is a $10 per billing cycle vehicle fee. It's a vehicle tax. This is provided for in the state statutes. And we're copying this, using a similar ordinance in Yorkville, where they did a similar thing. Now, the alternative would be stickers. You're familiar with vehicle stickers in a lot of towns, Cook County communities. Sometimes a vehicle sticker will be anywhere from $55 to $75 per year. And if you have 3 or 4 cars, you have to pay for all of them. In this case, what we're doing is we are assigning, we're making the assumption, and by the way, behind there is a legal document. The next page is a legal document from, I can't even pronounce that, Tosin and DeNolfo. Anyway, they are that's the law firm who did the Yorkville ordinance, and that's why we're using them for this ordinance as well. They drafted the memorandum, which indicates that these funds can be used to construct a public works facility. And then they also actually drafted an ordinance for us that could be used if this is approved by the village board. So in a nutshell, what we're assuming here is that the building will cost $1.5 million. We're also assuming that Stanley Tresca will donate the property that he had agreed to donate 2 years ago. At that time, we got this far before, and 3 days after the budget committee, we got a call from the contractor that the cost of the building was skyrocketing. That's right when the supply chain things hit 2 years ago. So now we're back again. This $10 fee every 2 months for each resident will cost each household $60 per year. So that $60 per year will generate $198,000 per year, which is available then for street maintenance and repairs. The debt service for $1.5 million building is $125,000 a year. So this will generate enough for the debt service for $1.5 million, and then additional funds, roughly $73,000 would be additional revenue available in case the building costs more, if the financing is more expensive for the building, or better yet, those would be available for street projects for capital improvements. So and the street department has really been struggling to be underfunded for years and years. They compete with the police department for general fund spending as we do in admin. The water and sewer department is really pretty well funded because they have a similar charge like this. They have a $10 fee for streets, for utilities, for water, and then a $10 fee for sewer. So this is a $10 fee for streets. So, and it would give us really a good funding source. It's committed for the public works garage, and then additional funding that could finance $70,000 a year. Could be another bond issue if we have another big project someday. So this will finally give us, we can accumulate some funds for the streets department as opposed to the other departments. So that's why we're doing this. I think this is something that I would encourage you really to read thoroughly, because there's a legal opinion. It's a 1 page, but it's a legal opinion. And this is something that it's a creative way to finance a public works project. So, and I think it's a good way, so I'll defer to kind of Dave's years and years of asking for this and Toby's experience with this.
So you guys know, just a real quick history. Do you remember a month ago, we had that 3 days of bitter cold? All 3 days, those trucks ran 24 hours a day. They couldn't shut them off because they have no electric over there to plug them in to keep them warm. And if they turned them off, they couldn't get them started. They can't preload trucks on snow events because the salt will freeze in the truck. And then they either have to dump it or they have to park it inside for a while to thaw. Some of the new trucks that we just purchased with taxpayer money right now are sitting outside in the cold, in the rain, in the snow, and the whole 9 yards. They're out of room there. It takes them an hour to get the trucks in and out because they've got them sandwiched so far in there. That facility, my recommendation is for the village to keep that facility because there's enough land in the back for all of our water main breaks and sewer repairs for the company Stark to go dump back there. And it's out of the way and they can load the sewer spoils up and haul them out when they got time. But they've outgrown it and they need a new facility. They really need a new facility, somewhere they can park stuff inside.
So this would be an addition of, as you said, $10 per cycle, so $5 per month.
$60 per household.
Okay. I mean, I know people still don't know what the money is used for that's on those bills to begin with for
One
water
thing
and sewer.
One thing that we did yesterday when we were going through this staff is that we looked at Pingree Grove. Our water bill, correct me if I'm wrong here, Lori, but our water bill starts at $20 plus, what's the minimum? $1 for the
Yeah.
usage.
$1.
Yeah, so $1 for usage.
Billing.
$20, sorry, $1 for billing. And $10 for water and $10 for sewer. And what's our first 1,000 gallons? $8 or something?
Oh, about $11.
$11. Pingree's starts at $91. We start at $21. They start at $91 on their bill. So they several years ago, they did the same thing that we're doing this year. They had EEI do a master plan for their village. And then they raised their rates first before they did any construction works. They've accumulated all these fund balances now. And just this year, they contracted for, I think it was an $8 million sewage treatment plant. So they're just now starting to spend those funds because they've been collecting them for about 4 years now. So that's comparing us to one other community. But both the fees for water and sewer are used for capital, and this will be used for capital as well.
I mean, I understand the need. I'm just concerned about the taxpayers, especially right now during a recession and with all the inflation going on and every dime is really being taxed literally, and $5 for a dozen eggs. And that's hard on this community.
It is, and it's also hard on us not us as employees or individuals, but as a business, as an organization, our costs keep going up too.
And it's gonna be even harder when we have to go in 2 years and get rid of trucks that we could have kept another 4 or 5 years because they're sitting out in the elements, and go spend another, who knows what a truck's gonna cost in 2 years, 160, 170,000.
So just a quick question on this. A year ago or a year and a half ago, when the first proposal had come up with Stanley donating land, and I think the building was like 1.2 or 1.5. It was about the same cost. Maybe it was a little less. There wasn't a recommendation for this additional fee at that time. Where was the funding being proposed to come from that now is maybe being asked to look at this fee rather than that type of funding?
Trustee Kelly, I don't remember, to be honest with you. I'm not sure we got that far.
Okay. All right.
Because all of a sudden, before we voted on it,
Yeah,
we got.
No, Stanley was gonna donate the land,
And he was gonna finance it for us.
and he was gonna finance it, and then the price of wood tripled. So then Dave went to Morton Buildings and some other building for metal, and he could get half of the building, but he couldn't get the other half because it was out at a boat in the ocean and they didn't know when they could get it.
I got
So,
about 15 different quotes for buildings on my computer here. We did it over a 2-year period.
and they just couldn't get it. They couldn't get enough of the product to build the building. So it just got shelved.
Maybe that's one of the big differences, Trustee Coth, is that this was going to be financed and through different means. And when we look at I did get the email. Thank you, Mr. Hedges. When you look at that email and the documentation, there's 900,000 in just interest payments on this like financing of the building. So maybe that's one of the big differences too, is that one, it's a 20-year amortization and it's almost, in equal amount. I mean, not completely equal, but 60% of the total cost of the building in additional just interest fees.
And keep in mind, in 5 years, we might be in the same spot. If they keep building all these housing projects going west and north, we're gonna be like the fire department. They're out of room, they gotta get another barn. And then 3 or 4 years later, they're out of room, they gotta build another one. We might be the same way. They keep talking about these 15,000 unit homes and apartments and complexes and all that. Public Works is gonna be in a bind. The police department's gonna be in a bind, and so is the water department. We won't be able to keep up with the building.
Are these estimates then based on the current number of homes that we have in the village right now, not including all the additional ones?
That's actually a little larger than our actual current is 3,048, and I use 3,300, and it's just a ballpark number.
Okay,
There will be some growth, but probably not.
No.
200.
okay.
And would the proposal be that this fee is eliminated once the building is paid for?
My advice would be to continue it, just like we have the water and sewer fees, because it will continue to fund capital projects. And streets is really, our motor fuel tax funds are just not anywhere near what our needs are in the village. So my advice would be to continue it, but it could be sunset.
If this moves forward, I mean, there would have to be, you're gonna have to have a communications campaign to explain this to the taxpayers exactly why. I mean, I hear the uproar now just with people struggling, so, I understand the need and I understand, I love the fact that we found a way to finance it, but, it's at an increase of every single house in the community at the same time that we just approved a increase for the fire department to build a new, and then just heard from the park district that they wanted to build one that was gonna be another $400 a month, or $400 a year extra for everybody. So I'm hearing that from people and they're crying.
I have to, and I responded to the people that have said something to me about it. The rec center's not gonna plow your streets. The rec center's not gonna come to your yard and pump out your sewer if it's flooding your yard. There's a lot of pros and cons for both, but the rec center isn't gonna keep the village services up to where they are now. It just won't.
Trustee Coth, did they move forward with it? I know I didn't get to go to the public meetings for that, so are they putting it on the ballot? It is on the ballot?
It will be. And the fire department went on the ballot first 3 times, it didn't pass. So, will the rec center pass? No, probably not.
So I guess that's a question I have too, Trustee Polistrini, based on something you brought up. Is there a reason we're presenting this as a fee versus a referendum?
Yes, so the village board can pass it.
Is that because we don't think it would pass as a referendum?
It's expensive to it's expensive to go to referendum. It costs funds. And I don't have an opinion on that really at this point, Trustee Kelly. The fire department just passed a referendum. I'd like to think that our streets garage is important, or at least respected and admired by our considered important by our residents? I don't know the answer to that. But, you know, we don't typically go to referendum unless it's required, let me put it that way.
What do you need from us on this then? I mean, you know, this is a working meeting today, so,
Ultimately, we'll ask for a recommendation to the full board that the fee be assessed and that the building be included in the budget. And then we'll have to develop specs and a bidding package and all that for building. We'll go out and do real bids.
and that would take place at the next working meeting of this committee.
Correct.
Okay,
We're not asking for any action tonight, right?
Yeah.
Well, you'll take all your action the next meeting.
okay. I'd like to ask them that this memo be sent to all the trustees. For the Public Works, I think, they should be aware of that now rather than surprised that it's there.
Sure.
So,
And I would like to ask our village manager to ask all the trustees at the next meeting, who's been to the village garage? Who's gone over there and seen what they're dealing with? I want all the trustees that have been there, raise their hands. I really do, because I bet not many of them have gone there.
Can you ask them to send me?
Absolutely. I want to know how many went over there and watched them struggle and working on a floor that the concrete's broken. They got to lay on pieces of wood to try and get it level enough so they can fix the equipment. I like a show of hands, and I'm going to ask that at the next meeting because I bet 2 or 3 of them at the most have been there. And you can't really get a feel for what they're dealing with until you can drive 3 blocks from your home over there to view it. You really can't.
Well, I think too, and I appreciate that. I am one of them that has been there. And I don't disagree. They absolutely, or we need a new facility. I think there's a different conversation though of whether you support streets to have a new facility and whether you support a new fee to pay for that facility.
Well, how do you pay for it then, Mr. Kelly? If we don't create the
That's why I
revenue?
was asking that when this came up before, 1.5 or 2 years ago, there was never a discussion for a fee. It was a discussion of this is going to be needed, financed over 10 years. It was going to be financed through Stanley and the property owner, with the transition of the property itself being a donation or a dollar transition, whatever it was. But it was something we were financing directly, and never once did we talk about a fee at that point.
My recollection is we discussed the potential of using the public use fund for this purpose. Public use transition fees go into the general fund budget, but there is a impact or capital component of that as well. We determined, however, though, when we completed our projections, that the money is being utilized to support the TIF, and the bond payments for the TIF escalate over time, and there would not be sufficient funds in the public use fund to finance the building.
Trustee Kelly, I think that goes back to, honestly, to me being new at the time, 2 years ago, and I was trying to come up with creative funds to spend out of. And Lori was being polite and working with me, but sometimes I didn't catch up with it right away. So we did not have a good way to pay for it, and the cost went way up.
And I appreciate that. This isn't like I'm not making any accusations or assumptions. So I want to be clear on that. What I'm looking at, and to Trustee Coates' question of how do we pay for it, there are certain things in here that theoretically we could classify as nice to haves in the full budget, right? Versus must haves and must have to operate. So I would say Trustee Coates would, and I don't want to speak for you, but I think that you would agree that a public works facility that protects the equipment that we have to invest in and gives them the ability to do the job to keep the community safe is a must have. a member of the BDC, but I will also say the facade program is probably a nice to have. That's $100K a year out of the $125K budget for that type of payment. If we were to evaluate, I think that we would have to have some serious conversations of what are nice to haves and what are must haves if we wanted an alternative for the fee, is all I'm saying. I'm not showing support either way. I'm just saying, to your question, I think it would require us to take a look and say, okay, we've historically done it. Does the village have to do this to operate and support the entire community? Yes or no? Can that be reallocated for something that is required to support the entire community? So just a thought. I'll stop at that point, but definitely worth a further discussion.
And I agree with that, Mr. Kelly. Also, keep in mind that the White Oaks Pond tax has gone up significantly on my family. And I feel so strong about this public works because I view what they got to go through. I don't care what it costs me financially, my family, I'm on board for it. Regardless of the extra money, tax money that I have to fork out for the pond.
Trustee Kelly, I think that's a real good point. And if there's some other nice haves that are in there that you want to identify and share with us, that'd be great. And I mean, I don't mean right now, but at another time. I think I agree with you on the facade program. It's a great program, but it's something that we could live without.
Yeah, I'm using that as an example, and I hate it as the example because it's one that I know the committee is very passionate about. But if I were to look at like, how do we provide basic services that are needed to the entire community, and what are those line items that are needed to provide those services? That's one that I think we could raise a question mark on. There may be others. I haven't gone through this in depth enough, but I think Trustee Polistrini, Trustee Coe, the board could probably find others where they're like, is that a must have, or can we hold off for 5, 7, 10 years to do this thing, right?
And the earlier we get some of those ideas, the sooner we can give you some analysis back on them. So if anybody has those suggestions between now and the next meeting, I'll just send it to us.
Did he hear the Pingree Grove water?
I don't know if he did or not. You want me to repeat it? Trustee Kelly, did you hear the?
I heard that, and I've also made my opinion known of our ongoing water and sewer fees in previous meetings that were originally set just to pay for the expansion of the water treatment facility. But I did hear that about the Pingree Grove fees and how they kept it into account for 4 years before they actually started utilizing it to pay for some of the upgrades.
And from the end of the taxpayer, speaking as a taxpayer myself, as well as somebody who has the job of guarding the taxpayer money at the same time, is being very careful with what we ask of them. And we know government never puts a tax out that they don't take back. The 20-year tax is always made permanent. The increase of the income tax is always made permanent. The temporary tax is kind of a joke. And honestly, I mean, and we look at it too, we understand we could use more money for each of the funds. And if we assess this for 20 years to keep it going would be to fund the rest of the water department, public works. But I mean, I can't be on board with this completely. I think there's got to be some kind of even if it's not completely funded, part of it comes out of our own budget that gets put towards it. But to finance the whole thing and to depend on the taxpayers to do that, that's a tough sell for me. I understand the need for it, but.
Well, I think one thing you should challenge the board on is as subdivisions continue to grow here, and we just had Crown come, right? 15,000 new homes and apartments and everything. Where are we going to get the revenue to buy the equipment, to run this plows, to run the squads for that? If we don't start looking now down the road for some kind of generated revenue stream of some kind. So we're going to go to the taxpayers in 5 years, and instead of getting that $10 a month, we're gonna hit them all up for a few hundred to pay for 3 more trucks that we're gonna need for subdivisions that are being built, a few more squads, a few more public works guys, a few more police. So I'm looking at $10 now isn't gonna be anything 5 years down the road. And we're being financially responsible because we're elected to look down the road. And I'm looking at all these subdivisions that are coming and industrial parks. And right now, we don't have enough vehicles to plow what we have. So the $10 now might, it's never a good time to raise money. We got COVID now, we got the war in Ukraine now, next year it might be something else. But the $10 in 5 years is gonna be nothing, but we're financially looking out long-term for the village and the taxpayers. So we don't go to the taxpayers in 5 years, 7 years and say, by the way, your taxes are all gonna go up $100 a month. Cause all of a sudden now we need 5 trucks, 3 squads, 3 cops. So I'm looking at it on that end of it, that we are being fiscally responsible with a low amount of money now so that we can continue to build it and buy the junk that we need to buy when these subdivisions are built.
I would add that we sit here a lot at board meetings and compliment our streets for great work they do on plowing. We all talk about how important our police department is. We want morale to be up. We want to be effective. We want community policing. We want to be the best at all these things as a community. And we can't be the best if we don't have adequate funds to do that. If I start getting the impression from this board that we want to have less participation in parades, less participation in Coon Creek, because all those things cost money. Employees get paid overtime to do that on weekends. We're increasing our protection of all public events now. We had an extra police officer on duty Saturday on foot. So we had 3 people on foot Saturday. We're now hardening our parade routes. So we're doing a lot because I have the sense from this board that they want to be the best at delivering municipal services. That doesn't mean we have to be the most expensive, but I get the impression we want to be the best. We're the only community in this area that has our own app, the My Hampshire app. And we're real proud of that. The mayors were proud of that because the other mayors around post on Facebook, I wish I had my app. These are the little things, but there are a lot of big things that add up too. And when we did Streetscape, the board was, we have to fix it right. Let's make sure that we do the infrastructure underneath the ground. It's not just making it look pretty. So these are all of those compliments and all those are that's the impression that we get as staff. That's what I'm getting. That's the direction I get in terms of how you want us to act as a community, as an organization. So at some point, if you want us to cut back, if you say to me, find another way to pay for that streets garage, I'll come back with $125,000 a year. But it might be, that's a police officer. That's 2 public works employees. So it's hard to find $125,000 every year for 20 years.
Well, I understand, and I think every village trustee, every mayor wants to have their town be the best. I mean, of course we want the best. But there also is a living within your means type of requirement that's in there too. Have we done any projections as to what we think as with all the projected growth within the community with the census and how many we expect to have here as to
Yes.
how many new trucks we're going to need to be able to do it? I mean, I know we've talked about needing another plow if we add 3 or 4 subdivisions. And so has that been done with the projection as to cost?
Yes, so and we can make a presentation on that at another time in detail, because it's been a while since we actually delved into the numbers, but for the record, for the record, at least, ideally, in the perfect world, all the fees that we charge developer fees are supposed to provide for those things. The transportation fee pays for roads down or snowplows. But the big capital things like a new village hall or a new public works garage, there just aren't enough funds. You'd have to save up for years to accomplish that. But those funds are, and we sat down with Dave last year, we haven't done it yet this year, and we looked at how many new homes are we going to be adding and which neighborhoods, when are you going to have to add a new route? He thinks that Prairie Ridge North will be the next route, or potentially Thames Farm, because they're moving pretty fast up there too. But Dave has 9 routes now. I think we showed the routes in something recently. And then he'll be adding another route. We'll have to buy a truck. That's what the truck is on order for. And so we kind of mapped it out based on how many home permits there are per year. And that also provides funds for other things besides just public works too. So we can do a presentation on that. Josh and I have done a forecast of what we believe the building will be. And then Lori plugs that into the fee sheets, and that tells us what that will generate. So we can do a presentation. It might be after the budget cycle, but we could do a presentation on the fee structure and looking forward how those fees fund village operations.
So I think that's important to share with the community so they kind of see where we're going. We're a community that was 5,000 people a couple of years ago, that's 7,000 now and expected to be, 20,000 in 10, 15 years. 20 years, I don't remember what the projection was. And that it takes more police officers, more trucks, more everything else. And so those expectations, and I really think it's important to be able to say, okay, then if you add the amount that the village gets for those tax, from each one of those property taxes, et cetera, what we would still need in order to be able to get the services that we need to be able to provide. I know this is just, $10 a month and, but it's one department's request. The police have their own requests. Each person has what they'd like to be able to add to their departments to make it the best. And the capital funds list, I think we've said we have $15 million on that list in order to build it. What's on that list? And not that I'm saying that this has jumped over it, but I know the list is there.
And what we're saying is this is the most important thing on that list, or it wouldn't be in this budget.
Or it wouldn't be in this budget.
That's right.
So all the other things then that may have been on the list for years are just
Well,
kind of skipped.
we've only had a capital budget for 2 years,
Okay,
3 years maybe. This will be our third year.
Okay.
But it's out there, it's available. We update it almost, as this budget cycle is going through, we're updating it all the time.
okay.
So yeah, it's available and clear, and it projects, it includes all the things that we just talked about.
Lori, would it be possible for you to figure out roughly how many years a squad lasts with the projected subdivisions? Because every 2 years or 3 years, we're gonna need new squads. Some of them, it's gonna be a continuous rotation. At some point in time, Crown just came. We got 2 other developers just came. At some point in time, we're gonna need another squad to cop, at least one. Is there a way to project down the road how short we're gonna be? I think about this all the time. We're gonna be so short in 5 years with the building that's all been proposed before all of us, and we aren't taking in enough revenue to support it.
That's what I was just trying to describe, so I did a really lousy job of describing it. Would you like to describe it better?
So is there a way to project
Yes, that's what
something out?
That's what we
Where-
have done before, and that's what I'm offering to bring back to you.
Can our police chief, can you come up with how many housing projects or how many streets or whatever per cop is needed? I mean, I don't know how to ask the question. When they start adding all these subdivisions, I say one squad, one cop, but it's, might be more. Is there a way to project that on the police end of it?
I'm sure that there is. I have to do some research. I mean, we can look at. We could do resource allocation studies. Typically, resource allocation studies are based on current demand. But with current demand and with the population forecast, if you have them, I just sent you a text message actually asking. Yeah, we can start looking at it. You have to be careful with, like even the people that produce the information, the FBI, about, officer per capita, they'll tell you this is not.
I know, I know we're just
So
projecting,
many cops per 1,000 people or,
Yeah.
per 10,000.
but I think it would be good
It
for
could be
the,
territory too.
I think it'd be good for the
People
board to
spread.
have that information. Cause when residents talk to me about it and I explain to them all the new housing projects that are coming, you've seen what's been built. We don't have adequate public works, we don't have adequate police. And as the vehicles that they're using wear out, we need new ones. They start to think about it. But if the board had all that kind of information, or we put it out to the public, they might have a better understanding.
They can do that. The capital budget, I suppose it became a pretty complex document, but that's what it's attempting to do. It tells you all the expenses that they have out there and all the revenue sources to pay for them. And then over time, it matches them up. And it tells you how you're short.
And you're not pre-warned if Kane County, they just went to KCOM and you have to upgrade all your stuff to fit their needs. They don't give you a warning that they're gonna add something or do something that would make you have to upgrade your stuff. They just do it.
I just got a
Perfect
letter last
example of that.
Thursday, I just got a letter last Thursday that says that our $20,000 fingerprint machine is, I mean, by the end of the year, it's at life. And I got the letter Thursday. So, I mean, I think the best way to do that probably would be to look at other communities that have had experienced growth, which we all have, but I mean, recent growth in the area, and look at their increased demand for calls for service and then base it on that.
Because the general public doesn't see Crown coming in here making the pitch for a new housing project. The general public, the public that we see at the restaurants, 90% of them don't even know who Crown is. 90% of them don't even know that all these subdivisions and developments over on 20 by the truck stop are even going. So when you start explaining it to them, then they're like, oh, wow, I didn't know, I didn't realize. So.
So we keep in mind that I'm speaking from memory here, but each one of those homes generates between $15,000 and $20,000 in fees towards some capital improvement, either transportation or transition fees, which just get us to the property taxes a year and a half later. So each one of those homes is generating $15,000 to $20,000 up front.
No, I know, but I mean, when people,
Plus the property tax.
because I've had people come up and say, what are we paying that $10 for on our water bill? Nobody knows what it's for. You start explaining it to them, then they realize what's going on. And one of the main things is the cost of everything's gone up. No one can dispute that. How about the cost of the chemicals to treat the water? They more than doubled and tripled on some of it. So I don't know if PR can do that, or if we need to do, get stuff in order and do a mass mailing, or what, to educate the residents, the ones that come up and don't have a clue about anything and ask questions. I tell them all, we're short on cops, we're short on public works, we're short on the vehicles. And in 10 years from now, when these subdivisions are all turned over and they're ours, and they got to start patching streets, what do? If we're not going to have the vehicles to even maintain them on snowplow, how are we going to have the staff to fix them, to fix the streets?
I can tell that you're all concerned about the planning forward, so we'll spend some staff time looking at how we project that forward, in addition to the capital plan.
Because even though it's $60, it's just $60. I do think there has to be some PR that goes along with it to explain where the money goes.
Absolutely.
I'd love to be able to see, because people, the question, where did some money for the water go? At $10 a month or 20, we see it as 20.
We'll be talking about
I'm
that.
gonna tell you that
tonight.
as soon as we finish this topic, we're gonna talk about it.
So you could see the 20, but putting something together to say, where does that, the question of the month type of a thing, where does that money go? So this is how much it costs for chemicals, this is how much, and that's just your basics.
So those are all capital improvement, and those are capital funds.
Mhm.
So they're all going to various equipment and, either new things or fixing those things. And I can give you
Yeah.
some,
Yeah.
like painting the water tower. Do you remember when we did that?
That's the only thing I know that
That's
gets paid for out of this
Oh,
fund.
digester filters,
Absolutely.
screens.
Absolutely. We're getting a new channel grinder to the tune of $115,000. The only way we can pay for that is utilizing the capital funds. So
Okay.
And I've had residents say, why are we getting rid of the squat? I says, it's got 130,000 miles on it. So, well, do you really want to get behind a vehicle with that kind of mileage and you can't chase somebody? Kane County got into this. When Pat Perez was sheriff, I went with him to the junkyard. Kane County was buying used tires from the junkyard for their squad cars. They had squad cars that could not engage, and they were placed in strategic areas where there was no crime because they couldn't engage. They could go like 45 miles an hour. That, I don't want our police department to get to that point. Where you're going to a junkyard to buy tires because we can't afford new ones.
And we want to be frugal. We want to be careful with the taxpayers' dollar, God bless you. But to move forward, it's an additional tax that you're putting on all of everybody, and it's $10 a month. But they're also being, presented with a potential $400 a year for the park district, and, the school district may have another referendum. I mean, every time it comes back, and when we pass this budget is just about the time that the tax bills are gonna come out. So they're gonna see exactly how much their taxes increased, and if you, engage in Facebook community, it's a matter of, it just seems like the majority are about an 8% increase every single year, with some that have 30% increases. So it's a lousy time to be on Facebook because everybody's just really feeling the pinch, at the same time that it's Mother's Day, Father's Day, graduation, and weddings. It's a gut punch. And we passed this, then you want, like the first meeting in April, and April 15th is tax day, that everyone has to pay. It's, there's never a good time to increase taxes. But, and you could just say it's just $10. I mean, when I look at my tax bill and it's gone up, okay, it's $10 for this, it's $6 for this, $3 for this. And then usually it's the schools that have gone up, $210 or something. It hits you, but that amount is budgeted in everyone's mortgages. And that's a big increase when they're used to paying a certain amount flat, and it has to go up, $80 to $100 to be able to make those payments. So,
Trustee Kelly's awful quiet.
he's crying.
No, I'm listening in. I shared my perspective on this, and that, I do support the need that exists. And I think that having discussions on how we pay for that need is warranted.
Yeah. And I know this is a budget committee issue to start with. But I wonder, because I'm throwing it out to our more experienced sage trustees, to put this on the agenda for the village board meeting, just for discussion purposes under new business, just to kind of get a general consensus of where the board thinks at a time where we still have an opportunity to move things around and to change things to get their consensus. Even if this committee then votes to move it forward with a support, that's 3 trustees. Potentially it passes with 2 trustees voting, and we still have to have 5 more, yes, for it to pass. So, Trustee Coe, what are your feelings?
I think that after they give the presentation that shows, I keep track of when Crown comes in and all these other developers come in, how many homes they're gonna do in how many years.
Mhm.
And the commercial projects that are coming. I know what we got staff wise at the police department and public works. I know in 7 years, we're gonna be too far behind the ball.
Mhm.
I've been on the board for over 9 years now. I've seen the can kick down the road till we have to get a new can because the can's wore out. And in 7 years, we're gonna start that process all over again,
Mhm.
because we're not gonna have the funds available. So hopefully they'll be able to crunch some somewhat realistic numbers
Mhm.
and come back to us.
So you don't think we should put it on the agenda?
No, I think we should.
Okay.
I think we should.
Trustee
There's never a
Coe?
good time to raise taxes.
Yeah.
There's never, but what I'm getting at is Josh did the numbers from the census on how many older people we got, how many younger people we got.
Mhm.
And it's a stark difference in the brackets, correct?
Yes.
So
Is it much higher for the older or much
lower.
lower? Okay, because you also think of property tax freezes. And,
Well, and the thing is now, we can either cut the amount we collect from the seniors, or we can exempt them as well.
that's an idea. That's good. That's a possibility.
We would have to verify that, but we think that.
You're not gonna get, on all these new housing projects, sorry, you're not gonna get a lot of older people moving here. There's really no incentive to move to a cold, snowy, crappy state where our politicians are all in jail. There isn't. So it's gonna be younger people.
Do we know that?
Absolutely.
No, I see that, and as the population ages, you get for different things, and I know there's a group that were very excited about the potential of having a rec center in the middle of town, and a lot of seniors were not happy with that because of the taxes, but they would use the track if it was there, and it was given to them for free. So I would like to add then to have it put under new business for discussion purposes only, so that we can talk about the potential increase of water taxes to be able to cover a new building, and just to get a general feel. Yeah, I guess I wasn't expecting it today. I mean, I guess I should have been, or, so it hasn't given me much time to really think it through and the possibilities, and so I was kind of just surprised. So, I need time to digest it a little as well, and I want to make sure that the trustees have an opportunity to think about it before they come into the meeting, which would be to share the memo that we got here for consideration, and that it will be discussed during the next village board meeting for discussion purposes only.
The upcoming board meeting?
Pardon?
The upcoming board meeting?
Mhm.
So you want to take one thing out of the budget and just discuss that?
No. Yes, because this is going to be an increase to all the taxpayers in the village. I would just like to raise it so that they're aware of it.
Will you guys be able to put together a rough draft
No,
of?
no, we can't do that in a couple of weeks.
I didn't think so.
Not in a week, not by next Thursday.
I didn't think so.
I mean, the agenda's going out Friday.
Right.
So this is,
Okay, then what if we pass it out to the trustees and just for their awareness and to
no, I've got enough to email it to.
to share with them. I mean, I would like them to have an opportunity. I mean, the conversation, trustee Coth comes with a perspective that's very strong and passionate. He's been out there. Every person that's been to the Public Works building has an opinion as well. Your request to have the trustees that haven't been there to go out there, this would give them an opportunity and an incentive to do that. I think it gives them more information ahead of time so that they can weigh their decision as to how they want to vote for
Well, keep in mind, the
this.
decision won't be made until April for the budget. So we're just trying to get out of committee.
That's 2 meetings.
Pardon me?
That's 2 meetings. We have 2 more meetings in March, and then, so that'll be the 3rd meeting, so, and it's anytime you pass a budget, it's a lot. I mean, and the responsibility is putting it onto the taxpayers, and you really just want a little opportunity to chew on it. So, if we were gonna go to referendum on something, wouldn't be decided in 2 board meetings. It would have been, 6-7 months, or what the plan is for the next year type of a thing, so.
We've talked a lot about referendums tonight, but keep in mind that the referendums we're talking about $4.6 million firehouse, which is, by the way, $1.4 million over budget now. So they're in trouble over there already. And a $32 million, I think, community center. So and if we built a village hall here, that would require something like that. So, Trustee Polstring, I'm going to ask that we postpone the water and sewer funds until the next meeting. This has been a lot longer than we expected so far, and we think we can condense that into the next meeting.
Okay.
So I think that we're pretty much finished with the general fund. You're okay with that?
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't mean to rant and rave.
No, that's fine.
I think about this all the time. I drive the streets as much as these guys do. And you go west and you see all the construction, and it's like have you noticed the plow truck, how fast they go down your street? Do you know why they go that fast?
Because they gotta get through the route.
Because they got more ground to cover than they can cover. And I know that, and I know to get 2 guys per shift, and if something happens, then what? I think of that junk, and
When we live it every day, it's easy for us. But
It bugs me.
we have to find a way to articulate it to other people so they understand it too.
When you're not a trustee, you don't see it, and, but understandably, everybody sees Public Works and what they do and compliment them. We have the cleanest streets around, and so they do an exceptional job. And you know,
I
every
think
now and
that- I
then a
think the
mailbox
residents
gets
of our
knocked
town-
over, but.
Frankly, would support our streets department.
Yeah.
We'll see.
And that's the general feeling that, you know, I would like an opportunity to be able to.
Before tree trimming,
Pardon me?
Yeah.
Yeah, other than
before
that.
tree trimming.
Okay,
Every
Alright.
once in a while, they like that. Take the right tree down.
okay. So we want to push then the utility funds then to the next meeting, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and we'll send them out ahead of time, so you have some time to look at this.
Okay. Okay, so we will table to make to March 6th. That's the date, right? Okay. March. But then you have nothing else then for today, or 7th?
Yep, that's it.
Okay. Are there any announcements then? Then I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. we stand
Thank you
adjourned.
very